streaming today, but welcome back to our latest episode of the Jobs Theory podcast. Now, as you know, this podcast is kind of an experiment, but also just a simple little short podcast where we take a look at the headlines, op-eds, articles of today and delve into what jobs theory actually says about them. So in today's episode, we're going to take a look at an op-ed that was written by Matt Higgins for Fast Company. And the op-ed is titled "The Real Reason CEOs Want Workers Back in the Office is Because They Want You to Quit." Yeah, I have a lot. I have a lot to say about this one. So let's dive in. What the article says is basically a lot of employers are going to push employees back to the office. Their goal is to have 90% of their employees back in office by the end of 2024, and those who don't comply are going to get fired. Now, the author, Matt Higgins, thinks that CEOs are doing this because they want to force mass quitting, and they don't want to do this as a move to increase productivity. And he cites all sorts of studies that go in favor of remote work being a productivity increaser, and we'll dive into that in a minute. So he starts making his case, and he says that during the pandemic, CEOs had to move remote work out of necessity. So basically, everybody's shutting down. They're not allowed to work in person. So if the company wants to continue to operate, they have to allow people to work from home. So these CEOs, they allow these companies to do that, and they position it as they're being oh so gracious, right? We are so gracious. We're going to allow you to work from home in these difficult times. Not that, legally we're required to do that. So, they make or at least imply certain promises that this is going to be a sort of a perpetuity kind of a thing where people are going to work from home in perpetuity. And so people move, they make life decisions based off of this. And, the employees, the labor is now stuck. They're in a position where they have to either move and uproot their family again, or they have to quit or get fired, right? Well, CEOs are also stuck in a situation. And the situation is that they're preparing for a recession that Matt says hasn't come, which technically may be true. I don't know the indicators right now. To be a recession, they say you have to have 2 periods of 0% or negative growth for it to be considered a recession. But there are other economic indicators out there, like inflation and a stagnant job market, that are seriously concerning. So CEOs are seeing this. They're seeing these expensive office real estate, this expensive real estate of offices sitting empty. And they're feeling the squeeze from this economy and inflation, or, being generous to the author, their perception of it. And they say, we've got to find a way to reduce the labor force without all these expensive severance packages. So CEOs, according to the author, cook up this return to office discussion as a way to get people to quit. They're saying labor is expensive. Let's figure out a way to make them quit so that we don't have to pay very expensive severance packages. So the final lines of this article are really telling to me. The author says, hiding behind the fine print of return to office policies, thinly veiled as camaraderie building, is a cowardly approach to a self-inflicted problem. All right, let's take a breath here. All right. Prepare for me to get on my soapbox here, gang. First off, this guy, there's so much wrong with this perspective. And I'm sure he's a great guy, but he's just wrong. Like I say, that final line, the final sentence of the article is basically him saying, this is class warfare. This is CEOs and the elites being cowardly and not willing to stand up and own their mistakes. And there's a huge problem with that. Because I think it's monolithic thinking, and we'll dive into that in just a second. But just starting here, he's looking at CEOs as these all-powerful forces of nature in business. And I don't think it's unusual that this guy claims that, because he says he's a CEO and he's viewing others through the lens through which he views himself. So he's probably thinking, I'm this all-powerful force of nature. And this is a hasty generalization about somebody and, whatever. But he's also looking at labor as completely powerless in this equation. And so that means that they don't have a choice. They can either comply, they can quit, or they can be fired. But there are a ton of options for labor in this situation. They can organize and strike. They can take legal action saying, you made certain promises to us during the pandemic, real or implied, and that has weight, and we are due a severance package. Or, we're due the rights to remote work that you promised us. Or they could even quiet quit, right? Just say, all right, you're going to do that to me, then I'm going to work every second that I can up till December 31st, 2024. And then you're going to have to, expel me from everything. But I'm never going the extra mile, and I'm taking every single paycheck I can. And I'm leeching off of you because you're leeching off of me, right? Remember, and this is vital, management and labor are a symbiotic relationship. Management can't do anything without labor. Labor can't do anything without management. So that's the first thing, right? Is that he's thinking that labor is powerless, management is all powerful, and they either have to comply, quit, or be fired. But that is not true. Second, he's engaging in this fallacy of the hasty generalization. And basically, he's saying that because he's a CEO, he's representative of the whole group. And he knows that you can't believe what other CEOs are saying or take it at face value, but you can believe him. There's a big problem with that, right? Like, there's a huge problem with that. He's basically saying, I'm indicative of the group as a whole. I'm representative of this massive, diverse, complex group with complex motivations. But if you look at the facts on the ground, it makes perfect sense to me that you actually can take CEOs at their word. And this isn't just a giving them the benefit of the doubt kind of a situation, because if you look at inflation is a major influence here. It's certainly the highest it's been in the last 25 years, if not the last 50. That's massive. And, the economy is stagnating for a lot of these businesses. So that means that companies either, to maintain growth, they have to boost productivity, right? If they want to maintain growth or at least profitability, they've got to boost productivity or mess with the profitability equation somehow. Yes, cutting costs is a part of that, but so is boosting profitability. So this is important, because there are a lot of ways to skin a cat when it comes to boosting productivity and boosting profitability. And the only way that Matt is looking is he's saying, well, you've got to cut costs, which is technically true. But you can also say, I'm going to get more out of the existing costs than I already have. That's essentially what boosting productivity is. So here's where things get interesting, because we're seeing a lot of people who are very opinionated about this, who have kind of politicized it, and they're saying, let's look at what the facts say. So they'll take one study or a couple of studies that show that productivity goes up working remote, and they'll say, look, this says that productivity goes up when we work remote. So I don't understand why all companies don't move to an entirely remote system, because productivity goes up. Well, then another group is going to do the same thing, but they're just going to do it from the opposite side. They're going to say, look, these studies show something very important, and it's showing that productivity goes through the drain when we go remote at home work. But neither side is looking at the details of the study. They're using it to confirm their bias or to promote their perspective. And they're not looking at details, which includes the roles that they reviewed or studied for that study, right? Which plays a huge part. It's probably the major factor in this. So if you look at the big picture, what we're actually seeing based on the data, right, these studies, is that more cooperative roles like marketing or finance, things like that, that are a couple of steps up the rung, right, a couple rungs up the ladder, they actually lost productivity and efficacy or efficiency, effectiveness when they moved to remote work. So they got hurt by moving to remote work, while more repetitive, forward-facing roles improved productivity. We're talking about customer support lines, people that are doing simple, repetitive jobs. So what we're actually seeing is that, yeah, there's a case for both sides of this argument, but the best case for the future, again, based on the data, is that a hybrid model is going to be best, where you have front-facing customer support roles working largely remote and having regular training Zoom calls, right? Because that's all they need. But more cooperative teams like marketing, high-level operations, finance, accounting, strategy, things like that, they're going to have to be in office to increase productivity. So we're probably going to see this hybrid model within companies where frontline employees are working basically entirely remote, while these more complex, more cooperative roles are spending 2 to 3 days in office and 2 to 3 days working remote. And that's probably, just from what I see, what we're moving toward is that because labor isn't powerless and because management isn't powerless, they're going to have to come together and find a solution that works for both. And to me, that is a great solution that's going to work for both parties here. Because, yeah, there are benefits that go with working remote. There are also benefits that go with making more money. And so people are going to self-select what they want. Now, it's time in our program where we get to, what does the jobs theory have to say about this? So I've got a couple of different points here. First, CEOs are hiring in-office work to do a job. And this is what Matt misses. Yes, part of that job could be that we have to reduce costs and wipe the board when it comes to labor, because they probably just have too many employees. We tend to see that in SaaS companies. They like to hire a lot of people because they like to collect people. Facebook, Meta, I guess now, but Meta, Twitter, Google, they're really bad at this. They like to collect people so that the competition doesn't get them, basically. And then they just kind of sit them there and say, okay, look pretty. Don't really give them a lot of work to do. At least that's what I've found as I've done some research around this. Now, if we take CEOs at their word, right, and they say we want to move people back to this in-office work, well, they're hiring that to do a job, and we know that jobs have 3 energies: social, emotional, and functional. So the social energy here could be something like, I need to protect the brand and myself from negative blowbacks that would come from layoffs. So these people are going to have to choose for themselves and self-select in or out. Totally get that. And that kind of supports Matt's perspective. But here's one that's more genuine, I guess, is the emotional side, which is, I miss the energy of communal work. I want to feel that energy, feel the excitement of teams that are working together, solving problems in the same space. And you just don't get that energy through a Zoom call. I'm sorry. I've been on many Zoom calls that have tried to do that, and you cannot capture the same energy as if you were in the same room with the whiteboards doing the work yourself as a team together, physically there. It's electric. Finally, they're looking to boost functionally. They're looking to boost productivity on key teams. So key teams, like the studies show, more complex, more cooperative roles do better in person. They just do. So CEOs could be hiring all of this to do this. Now, the next perspective here is, looking at hiring and things like that. And this is, what is the employee's job to be done? So we've talked about the CEO or the company's job to be done, but we haven't really talked about the employee's job to be done. Now, jobs theory has a unique perspective on the employer-employee relationship. And it's that employers are selling money and employees are buying that money with their time, attention, labor, and expertise. So both parties in this relationship have a job that they're trying to solve. They have a struggling moment and progress that they're trying to make. Now, the best employers are able to find and retain employees because they understand and solve that job to be done. And this is all backed by research from Gallup. Now, Gallup did some research, 2018, I think, is when it was done. And they were saying, what are all of these companies doing that are retaining people? And we didn't have the level of retention problem we had during the pandemic. But what we saw is a lot of millennials and Gen Zs were jumping ship every 18 months to 3 years. And those companies that were able to recruit and retain, what were they doing differently? And Gallup's research boils down to three things. I call it the 3 Ps. Number one is purpose. And this is, what is the purpose of the role? What is the purpose of the company? What are the goals of the company? What are the goals of the employee? And are they aligned? This is kind of that squishy why kind of stuff. Like, what is your why? The Simon Sinek stuff. And that's important, but it's only one part of this equation, right? Number two is progress. And this is like, what does progress mean in the role, for the company, and for the individual? And is the individual actually helping the company make progress? And can they feel it and measure it? And is the company helping the individual make progress towards their personal goals? And can the company feel and measure that progress, right? And then finally is this performance. Is the company helping the employee to become even better at their job? Are they helping them, or is the company helping the employee develop new skills? And is the employee able to perform at their best? So basically, it's viewing this employee as a whole human being with a job to be done and solving that job to be done. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that we got to change how we hire people, right? So we got to stop trying to attract talent based on features and benefits. And if you look at a job description these days, what you often see is, this is the role of the job, right? These are the features of the job. Then these are the benefits. And you will actually literally find a benefits section. And they don't focus on the progress that people are trying to make or the reasons why people started doing that work. And hire according to that. But people don't make purchase decisions or decisions in general in that way. They have a struggling moment, they're trying to make progress, and they hire something to help them make that progress. And you can see in jobs, in employee work. This is going to be weird, but bear with me. You can really see this play out with strippers. So there are a couple of common stories that you hear from people who are working as strippers. The first one is, kid you not, first one is, I am on, like, financially, I'm at the end of my rope, and this is the only thing that I feel like I can do to make money. So that's one. Another story is, I was in an abusive relationship and I needed a way to feel empowered and regain autonomy over my body. And those are two very different jobs, but they're hiring the same job of being a stripper to help them make progress in that way, right? So there are some really interesting things that businesses can and should be doing when it comes to this. And we're coming up to our time limit here. But as we look at this article, this op-ed again, there are a couple of things I want you to remember. First is that labor and management need each other. They're in a symbiotic relationship. One can't make progress without the other. That CEOs, if they are actually going to enforce this policy, which I don't think they will, I think that what we'll probably have is a situation where we reach a compromise of a hybrid model with front end working primarily from home. Up the rung, it gets more in office until you reach a place where it's all largely in office, at least 2 to 3 days a week, and then 2 to 3 days spent working remote. But that, we have these jobs that we have employment that people are hiring to help them make progress in their life. And, using this article or this op-ed as a way to explore larger themes of jobs theory, of hiring, of making sure that you find and retain good talent that really aligns with what you do and your culture and everything else, right? This is the conversation that you need to be having. Is you need to start understanding what was the struggling moment that your employees were experiencing that made them think, I need to find a new job. I need to figure this out. And what was the story behind that? And then we use the example of strippers, just kind of a fun, playful thing here, but it's true. And it's a great example. So, as you move forward in your business, look to jobs theory as you're trying to find people to hire. It's got an answer. This is Zach Stuckey here, just signing off. As always, I'll put the link to the article in the description, but just remember, okay, your customers and employees don't care about you. They care about making progress. Have a good one, gang.